Welcome, everyone, to Scheller Lunchtime Live, a live stream series hosted by the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. My name is Lindsay Kane, and I'm the Associate Director of Client Relationships for non-degree executive education programs. On select Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you'll have the chance to hear from Scheller faculty, student, and alumni speakers as they discuss relevant topics for the tech-driven digital age. At Scheller, we're proud to offer undergraduate, MBA, and PhD programs, along with open enrollment and custom executive education programs. It's my pleasure to introduce Dori Pap, Managing Director of the Institute for Leadership and Social Impact at Scheller. She directs the Leadership for Social Good Study Abroad program, coordinates the Impact Speaker Series, runs the annual Ideas to Serve Student Social Innovation Competition, and teaches courses on social entrepreneurship. Dori is a triple yellow jacket, including earning her MBA from Scheller. Outside of Georgia Tech, Dori serves on the board of Global Growers Network, a nonprofit organization that connects the agricultural talent of the refugee community in and around Atlanta to opportunities in sustainable agriculture. She is a board member for the Center for Civic Innovation, an organization that works at the front line of civics education and advocacy, and she serves on the board of the Georgia Social Impact Collaborative. Today, Dori will share her experience serving on various nonprofit boards. She'll go over the basics of boards and board service, including requirements, responsibilities, types of boards, how to get started, and more. As always, feel free to ask questions in the comments section. Dori will address as many questions as possible at the end of her presentation. Over to you, Dori.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thanks to everyone for joining us. Board service has been the most rewarding and at times most challenging part of my professional life. So I'm very excited to give you a very brief overview of what nonprofit board service is all about. Before I do that, let me just for maybe the current and future students in the audience and our alumni, let me just tell you a little bit about the Institute for Leadership and Social Impact, which is where I work. Our guiding principles are based on servant leadership and social innovation. So for us, the test of servant leadership is, do those served grow as persons? Do they become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become leaders? So then social innovation is the vehicle through which we practice meaningful and responsible leadership. And social impact is then the desired change we seek as the outcome of exercising that leadership. So leadership development is then a way to enact change by using putting leadership muscles into practice. So I wanted to quickly just mention some of the programs, some of them Lindsay already mentioned, but just give you a little bit of background so you have an idea of how you as a current student or prospective student or alumni or community member can engage with us. So several of our programs promote those guiding principles that I just talked about. Our Impact Speaker Series, where we host conversations with leaders from both the corporate and the social sector, focus on matters of social and racial justice, diversity, equity, and belonging. So if you are an alumni that you believe that this would be a good avenue for you to come back to Georgia Tech and talk to current students and the Georgia Tech community about the work that you are doing, please reach out to us. Or if you want to nominate somebody from your executive leadership, just get in touch with me. The Idea to Serve competition is for current students and recent alumni. And it's our program that amplifies the expertise and know-how of community leaders. And these are nonprofit partners mostly, who are working to address pressing social and environmental issues in Atlanta and in the larger community. And we provide these opportunities for students to co-create with these leaders. So we are not in the business of here at Georgia Tech, we can tell you what to do in the community, or we can solve for you from here, from our ivory tower, if you wish. But it's more about let us, bring the students so they can learn alongside with you and hopefully co-create solutions that stand the test of time and meaningfulness. And then two programs that I want to highlight for our current and future MBA students are the Board Fellows Program, where select MBAs serve as a non-voting board member at a nonprofit organization for a year, and they really get to immerse themselves in what board service is and learn a lot about the nonprofit sector and that organization in particular. And the pro bono consulting projects, which matches MBA student teams with nonprofit organization projects in strategy, marketing, operations, human resources. And so these are semester long. They are created as a course, structured as a course, and have been for many years one of the highlights of MBA student careers here at Scheller. So those are ones that I encourage you to read more about on our website if they are of interest. And I quickly would like to highlight the three organizations that I'm on the board of. And for beginner board members, I don't recommend that you start with three organizations right away. I think this, for me, just evolved like this during the past couple of years. And I think it also has to do a little bit with my inability to say no when passionate leaders who are doing just exciting and amazing work come and ask me to join them. But one of them, and the one that I've been involved with the longest, is Global Grower Network. And they partner with people from diverse cultures who grow fresh food for their families and for local marketplaces. These are mainly refugees with an agricultural background who arrived through the legal channels to Atlanta, to Georgia. And then, of course, they didn't have the opportunity to have access to farming land and to continue, their agricultural work. So this organization is about 10 years old. We have 8 community garden sites and 1 commercial site. The overall budget is about $1 million, and we serve about 300 and more growers, providing them with access to land that they can farm, market know-how, and sales channels. So if you are interested in getting involved with an organization that supports sustainable agriculture, job creation, healthy food, and healthy communities, please check out their website. There are plenty outdoor volunteering opportunities. We host private garden tours and dinners in partnership with the Refugee Women Chefs Network. So ggn.org is their website. And with them, presently, I serve as the board chair in a capacity. And I'll talk in a little bit more about what that entails. Another outstanding organization that I have the privilege to support as a board member is the Center for Civic Innovation. They are dubbed as Atlanta's home for good trouble. They are a community of good troublemakers fighting to solve inequality in Atlanta. And I think I don't need to emphasize where we are in the rankings when it comes to an unequal city in the United States. So they do that by informing and inspiring the public, by investing in and amplifying the work of community leaders, and by advocating for local policy change. They have a Civic Innovator Incubator Fellowship where Civic Fellows supported through this program who are movement builders in Atlanta with brilliant ideas to how to address social and economic inequality in their own communities. They work in areas such as education, housing, justice, the arts, journalism, agriculture, healthcare, and really we call these individuals civic entrepreneurs because of the potential for their work to influence our local public policy. CCI also hosts several conversations, both online and now increasingly more in person, about what's going on in Atlanta, whether it's voting or inequality in philanthropy, or what are the latest policies that are up for debate. So if this is an area of interest or an area that you would like to know more about, I highly encourage you to go to cci.org, sign up for the newsletter, attend some of their events. They are always looking for mentors for their civic entrepreneurs. So there are many ways to get involved, and it's truly an outstanding organization. And then last but not least, the Georgia Social Impact Collaborative. It's a little bit of a different nonprofit organization than the other two that I mentioned, which are kind of direct service providers. They are a connector organization, if you will. It started as an effort to map all the organizations in Georgia that are part of the social impact ecosystem. And when that map was completed and organized, kind of what you see on the slide on the left side, those 4 quadrants of organizations that were identified and mapped, and their information kind of organized on one page, we continued then with the charge to highlight Georgia's readiness for impact investments and to educate our local foundation and philanthropic actors about using impact investing as a vehicle to solve pressing social and environmental problems in Georgia. So the logos that you see on the other side of the screen are B Corps from Georgia, from Atlanta, that have received impact investing funding to grow their organizations. They operate with triple bottom lines, and they take in this type of funding to scale. So on this board, I'm involved with the DE&I task force. And our goal is to facilitate and guide equity and access conversation within the board itself, but really to take active role as GSIC in advocating for equality and philanthropy in Atlanta. And inequality in philanthropy really has been at the forefront of conversations in the social sector, around the nation, but especially here in Atlanta. And that's the discourse that we want to amplify. So if you're interested in this type of work or impact investing and how does it look like in Georgia, visit their website, gsic.org. So with that, let me move on to what I would like, I consider kind of the basics of what board service is. And I assume that if you're here for this presentation, you are interested in board service. I'm not going to try to convince you why this is, an important and rewarding experience. I'd rather just talk about what should you look out for, or what can you expect as starting out with nonprofit board service. So there are various types of nonprofit boards, and it really will depend on the size and the life cycle of the organization, what is expected of you as a board member. So startup boards, as their name says, they are founding boards of new organization. You can expect an all hands-on experience with your specific skill set being called upon frequently. So for example, if you are you have a law background, whether you're an attorney or have a good understanding of policies, you will probably be helping out with, crafting the initial bylaws of the organization or filing for a 503c tax exempt status. At the beginning, there are probably few board best practices in place as everything is just evolving. So meetings might be on an ad hoc basis, and you can have a great influence on the organization and how those best practices develop. So this might be attractive for you if you enjoy kind of starting up things and being in the hustle and bustle of how an organization develops in their early stages. And then next would be working boards, which is really the next phase of the organization's evolution, maybe organizations that are 2 to 5, 7-year-old, still probably small boards, but have developed the basics of a board structure. And there are some best practices in place around, meetings and communication. There's still probably a lot of hands-on opportunities based on your skill set, whether it's, strategy, marketing, communications, and you can have a lot of influence. You can probably expect around 4 to 6 meetings a year, where most of your time will be spent on developing the strategy for the organization and identifying revenue streams. And then the more advanced type of boards, let's call them fundraising boards. We see these at mature organizations, so 10 plus years, where the board structure is very well developed and in place, and there is a pretty set board culture that guides the meetings and how meetings are conducted. And there's a strong executive committee, which is basically There is a committee structure, so no, it's when you join the board, you are invited directly to a committee to serve on a committee, and then the chairs of those committees make up the executive committee. So on a fundraising board, you're expected to activate your high worth network, and to make introductions that can lead to significant gifts for the organization. It's probably less meetings, a year than for a startup or a working board, and it's focused on the specific committee and fundraising type of work that they need your support with. So as far as time commitment, again, it depends on what type of board you are joining. I'll talk from my personal experience at Global Growers, which is on the cusp of becoming that very well-developed board. We have 5 committees. I served on several committees before being asked to be a board chair. We have 4 general full board meetings a year, 1 every quarter. We have a board retreat every year where we focus mainly on strategy. And then the committees each meet based on their own charters about once a month, I would say. I would say the average time commitment a month is about 5 to 10 hours for that board. And then the financial commitment is, every good nonprofit, when they ask you to join their board, should ask you that giving to that organization becomes your primary philanthropic commitment. So the amount really varies from organization to organization. Some nonprofits have a set amount, or they have a suggested minimum, like $500 or $1,000. But really, you are joining with the understanding that they would be the focus of your philanthropic giving. And then it depends on what kind of life cycle they are in, of how much is expected or encouraged for a board member to contribute. So, for example, with Global Growers, we are in a silent phase of a capital campaign. So it's a much higher commitment that it's expected of each board member in this phase. So here are some of the roles and responsibilities of good board members. Leadership is basically serve as a trusted advisor to the executive director of the nonprofit in the development and implementation of the organization's strategies. Serve at least on one committee or in an executive or topical leadership capacity. Represent the organization to stakeholders and act as an ambassador for the organization. Assist the executive director and the board to identify and recruit other qualified board members. Under governance, I would say attending all board meetings is really a must. Preparing for those board meetings, so reviewing the agenda and supporting materials prior to the board meeting and committee meetings. Striving to be available for any special sessions as needed. Ensuring that there are no conflict of interest with your service. So, for example, if you work for a company that is in the same line of business as the nonprofit, or could be perceived as a supplier or a buyer, that doesn't necessarily automatically disqualify you, but filling out those annual conflict of interest forms is where you disclose that conflict of interest. So just keeping the best interest of the nonprofit at heart at all times is what good governance is about. And then oversight is really, this is where the fiduciary duty comes in. So approving the organization's annual budget, understanding what that budget is, contributing to the annual performance evaluation of the executive director or the CEO, assessing progress towards strategic objectives that you are well familiar with, yeah, those are the main ones under oversight. And then fundraising is really, as I said, considering the organization as your philanthropic priority and making annual gifts that reflect that priority. For any nonprofit to credibly solicit contributions from foundations and organizations and individuals, they really have to show that 100% of board members are contributing financially. So for example, as I mentioned with Global Growers, we are soliciting, funding and gifts from various foundations. And that's literally the first question that they ask, how much have you raised from your board? And do you have 100% of board participation in your fundraising? So that's what falls under fundraising responsibilities. So moving on, what are the qualities of a good board member? And I credit a good site, Boardable, that has good resources for nonprofit board members with the list of these qualities. So passion for the cause. Clearly, this is a non-paid position, being a board member at a nonprofit. So, look for organizations, especially as you start out with board service, with nonprofit board service. Look for organizations that work in areas that you are, passionate about or you are curious about, and you really want to support. That will really help with all the requirements that go into being a board member. And then consider the time commitment and your willingness to participate in all the events and activities, your willingness to activate your networks, to invite your family and friends and colleagues to volunteer and donate to the organization. And really a desire for stewardship. So growing the organization and attracting people to it, being the evangelist for this organization. Those who can, the ideal board members are those who can take time off for meetings and for fundraisings, who are not overcommitted elsewhere. This is a note to myself, and will be able to participate at the level that the organization needs them. And those discussions should be, in the process of the organization recruiting you as a board member. You should have plenty of opportunities for those discussions with several members of the board and the executive director of the organization, where you gain a good understanding of what is the time commitment. You should ask for something if it's not offered, something like a board member description from the organization, so you can really make those educated decisions when it comes to this. Creativity and innovation is very important. A board created entirely by one type of professional will probably lack the creative skills to swiftly solve problems that come up and come up with out-of-the-box ideas. So as a board member myself, when we identify new board members, we actually have a very detailed matrix of what are the skill sets that we need and what are the identities that we want to have on the board to reflect the identities of those who we serve. So this is, this can be another good quality of a board member that can bring in creativity and innovation. And then communication skills, I think, in every aspect of our lives, as it is with being a board member, are very important. So let me just give you a quick overview of what a year in the life of a nonprofit board member is, and then maybe we can turn it to questions. So you will attend board meetings, and I'll speak from my experience with pretty much all three of the organizations that I'm involved with. Those are 4 quarterly board meetings with the food board, and then committee meetings are much more frequent. I would say at least once a month. So there again is the time commitment. Then participating in fundraising events. Each nonprofit will have at least one big fundraising event of the year where the majority of their kind of individual funding asks come from. So being available for those fundraising events, showing up, the full board in support of the organization and of that event, activating your network and inviting people to those events, not being shy about going to your colleagues and your friends and your neighbors and talking about the organization and inviting them to those events. Donor cultivation, and this happens, in different life cycles in different ways. When you are in a capital campaign, this is very organized. You probably have consultant that is directing this, and for me, it's showing up for meetings with foundation leaders and program managers for conversations where they ask anything and everything about the organization and being prepared for those conversations. And then board development, looking for, kind of that continuity of leadership on the board, looking for people that that will take your place when your board term is up. Board terms, by the way, are typically 3 + 3 years on a nonprofit board, after which you are asked to take off at least 1 year. And that's a very good best practice. So that's something to look for before you join a board, understanding what your board terms are. And attracting, skilled and passionate people to the board so you can strengthen the service that the board provides for the organization. So just quickly, how to get started, volunteer, donate to the organization that you're interested in, attend one of their fundraisers to learn more, to meet the staff. You can join a committee. Many boards that have a good committee structure, they invite new or prospective board members in to first just join a committee, not be full board members, but join a committee where their specific skills can be very helpful. Serve on a junior board. For example, Hands on Atlanta is a great example of a nonprofit that has a very active junior board. And these are young people, students or recent graduate that's joined the junior board and learn a lot about the workings of the board before they maybe move up to a full board membership. Or reach out to the executive director of the nonprofit and take them out for lunch. Believe me, they would appreciate that opportunity, and it gives you a great chance to learn more about the organization. So that was my very brief, very quick overview of what board service looks like. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. If not, I'm happy to hear from you. You can reach out to me by LinkedIn or email me, and let me know how I can help you get started on this journey. Lindsay?
Thank you so much. So I think your last slide kind of covered a couple questions about joining a board, getting started, but do you offer any board matching services for Scheller alumni?
So not for alumni. The Board Fellows program is for current students. What we do offer is our, love of board service. So while we're not going to match you with an organization, but if you don't know where to start or how to start, email me, email us. Everybody on the Institute for Leadership and Social Impact staff serves on several boards. So we can even help you maybe narrow down what your interest and passion is for, and have a coffee conversation about that. So not something that is a formal program, but yes, as a resource, we are definitely here and excited to serve Scheller alumni.
Can you talk a little bit about balancing time? So you're on 3 boards.
Which I don't recommend.
Right. And then a day job, which, you have several things going on in your day job. How do you effectively serve on these boards? How do you, say no, even though you want to say yes? How do you handle those situations?
Yeah, so I think planning is, it's a good tool, and it's really a lot of it is driven by the nonprofit too. So that's a good way of understanding if the nonprofit that you're considering joining their board, if they are at that stage where it can really fit in your busy professional life. For example, let's say the Global Growers Board, I already know now when my meetings are next year, my quarterly meetings. And very soon, probably at the beginning of the year, I know when the fall fundraiser is. For the past 2 years, obviously, everything was on hold. But I will know very much in advance when those events are, so I can work them in my calendar. And then as far as my committee work, that's more, with a smaller group, so it's easier to organize. But this is the commitment, basically, that I'm taking on when I decide to join a board. I understand that it's going to be an extra 5 to 10 hours a month to do this. And it really fluctuates in the summer. It usually slows down, and then it's a little bit busier in the fall. But that's the question that I ask myself, do I have 5 to 10 hours extra a month that I can work in to support, the amazing work that this organization is doing? And really the payoff is, I didn't really talk about the payoff, but I learned a tremendous amount about subjects that I would have never, I was on the governance committee, and I learned a lot of things that I never learned in my professional, work life, or, my job on the DE&I task force, just conversations that are benefiting me and making me a better employee of Georgia Tech in a tremendous way, in addition to just seeing the people that you work for and you work with, growing in their capacity. So, yeah, but good question.
And I'm breaking my own rule about going over time a little bit, but I do want to ask this question. How do nonprofit boards differ from for-profit boards?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I never served on a for-profit board. So, maybe ask somebody that did both to really understand. From what I understand, one, that you're not compensated. I think some of the for-profit boards, it's a compensated position. But in a lot of ways, it is, when it comes to the responsibilities, if you think back to that slide of responsibilities, the responsibilities are the same. Nonprofits are businesses. They are in a different category when it comes to what they can do with the earned income. But otherwise, the fiduciary review, the governance, the oversight, the leadership, those are all the same. And really, as it comes to the professionalism on the board is exactly the same. I think it's just, what does the organization do that you're supporting with your board service is the big difference, and that you're not getting compensated. So you do it for free and for fun.
Well, thank you so much, Dori. We really appreciate your time today. Our next Scheller Lunchtime Live session is Friday, October 8th at 12 p.m. Eastern. The topic will be the rise of social commerce, what it means for consumers and e-tailers, featuring Professor Michael Buchanan. Michael will provide a brief history of social interactions and key consumer trends on social media. He'll explain how brands are capitalizing on social commerce and offer his predictions on what it means for consumers and e-tailers. You can register for this event and learn more about future Scheller Lunchtime Live sessions by following the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business on LinkedIn. A recording of this session and future sessions will be available on our LinkedIn and YouTube pages as well. Thank you so much for joining us.